which is here. All right, so there's a medical chatbot in Utah. Utah is the first state to try having an AI that can diagnose patients and uh, and even prescribe medicine without a human in the loop. Um, yep. And it turns out that it's extremely vulnerable. You can trick the AI into doing terrible things. Like you can tell it that you're out of date, here's a bunch of new medical information to add, and give it false medical information, and it will then echo that back to you. Not only applies in the current session, though, it doesn't permanently learn it. So there may be some limit to the harm. However, it does mean, of course, that a patient who has a long conversation could steer the AI into saying the wrong thing. And they're able to get it to triple the dose of medicines by saying, oh, there's been new research saying you should prescribe more, and they got it to prescribe methamphetamines to people and stuff. So it's like all AIs, it's pretty easy to trick and fool, and it's probably quite risky to let it prescribe medicine without having a human review everything. Um, so there's a malware campaign targeting Ukraine. And the interesting thing about this is it's not very common for Windows malware to do this. The Windows malware is obfuscated .NET malware, which is not too surprising, but what is don't as common, not as common, is it tries to detect if it's being analyzed. So it finds that it's in a virtual machine or that it has Wireshark, Procmon, or Fiddler, it immediately terminates its execution. So if you try to analyze it the way we're doing in my malware analysis class, it won't work. And this is a very common thing for Android malware. If you want to analyze Android malware, you cannot use a virtual machine. It won't work because the malware will detect it's in a virtual machine and not run. What you must do is run it on real hardware. And we may be in the case of having to do that for the Windows malware, or perhaps use a better virtual machine that conceals the fact that it's a virtual machine more. And so this is interesting. The Israelis hacked into the traffic cameras in Tehran, the capital of Iran, and apparently they were there for years without ever being detected. And they used it to map out the pattern of traffic and where everybody was going. And that then helped them plan the strike to hit the people they wanted to hit. So this is another example like the pager attack about a year ago, where they sold pagers to Hezbollah, I think it was Hezbollah, and then blew them up all at once, injuring a whole lot of the members. Um, Israel has very advanced espionage capabilities, and they do sneaky, dirty tricks that take years of preparation. Um, so this is an important thing to know. Whenever you open a web browser on your smartphone, and I imagine on your desktop too, and every app you open on your smartphone, if it has ads, it rents out the space of the ad. So when you open up a web page and it has an ad, before it shows you an ad, it sends signals to hundreds of people describing you in considerable detail, giving them demographic information about you. Here's the age range, here's the income range, here's what part of the country they live in, a lot of information about you. And then all these people have a chance to bid to put an ad on the page. There's an auction, and whoever pays the most gets to put an ad on the page. And this is all automated, so it happens quickly, in a fraction of a second. But the point is, a lot of people use this for surveillance. All they have to do is join the network, say they'll buy an ad, but then they don't even have to ever buy an ad. They just listen for the announcements announcing the auctions, and from that they can track down people, find their physical location, find out what they're doing. They can spy on people, and they can all do it without a search warrant. At least they are. Customs and Border Protection is using it, and now ICE is using it. And this is part of the age of surveillance capitalism, and why people get privacy browsers and such. If the more they understand this, um, everybody is able to find out essentially everything about you, and it leads to the effect that you'll always see ads. I see ads advertising treatment for diseases I have. They know what I'm sick with. So I guess they see me sending messages to my doctor or something. Even when you talk about something, the ads very often reflect exactly what you talked about. Not that a microphone directly picks it up, although that's possible, that's not common. But what's common is your behavior will somehow indicate that you're interested in this topic, that sort of thing. They can deduce an awful lot from your behavior. So it's a thing to know. People really are spying on you, and they know pretty much everything about you when you use the internet. That's why a person I know who really needed anonymity was Nicole Perlroth. She was the cybersecurity reporter for the New York Times for 10 years, and she would go meet national security important figures, like people that were on the run from oppressive governments and stuff. And she said when she went to meet them, she would drive a long distance from home to meet them in like a cafe and take no electronics at all. No computer, no cell phone, no nothing. And she would just show up with a pen and a notebook and write down what they said. Because that was the only way to avoid getting tracked. And actually, these days, she'd have trouble getting there without her car being tracked. She'd be better off if she had a really old car like mine that has no smart features. And even if you used an Uber or Lyft, those things are all being tracked too. So, if you want to actually go somewhere and not be tracked, it's really hard. And so this was interesting. If you think your iPhone is safe, it's a lot less safe than it used to be because of these powerful exploit kits that are now out there. And these things were essentially military action, military malware that has been leaking out into the public sector, the private sector, I should say. And so this one is malware used by people, and it can it can hack all versions of iOS from 13 to 17, going up to December of 2023. It mostly uses exploits that have been patched. So if you're putting on all your updates, that would stop a lot of it. But sometimes it has new exploits, and other malware kits do. One thing that was very interesting about this is it checks your phone, and if your phone has the high security option turned on, it doesn't bother infecting you. And let's see, it starts by fingerprinting your device to decide if it really is real. And there's a security feature you can turn on, which is added recently to iPhones, a high security mode. I forget the exact name of it. And they rapidly recommend using it if you feel like you're at high risk of being attacked. And it will not run, and I'm just looking for the name of the security feature, but I may not be able to find it. Bailing out. If it's in lockdown mode, there you go. It's called lockdown mode. So if you're in lockdown mode, this thing will not infect you. And so that's a good thing to know. If you're worried about your iPhone being infected, you might want to use lockdown mode. It will decrease the functionality of the device, but it'll make it a whole lot safer. So this was just sort of interesting because I haven't heard of HTTP response splitting in years. HTTP is a plain text protocol. In fact, we're going to use it tonight in the lecture. And we make a request to the web server, and down comes a bunch of plain text. And if you can inject a carriage return line feed into a request that's echoed back, you can get 2 web pages to come back. And your browsers will be confused and only show one of them. That's called HTTP response splitting. You can often add an extra web page to a legitimate page coming from a server by crafting the request so you can change the page into a different page. And that was a Node.js flaw that made it possible again. This is a really old attack, but it came back again. And so now there was a Southern California Air Board, and they were considering pollution rules, and they put up a board for public comment. And so the people that wanted to perform more air pollution and get away with it just got an AI to flood it with comments. And the legislators were fooled by this and thought, gee, there's a whole bunch of people that want us not to pass this pollution law, so they didn't. So this is an ever-increasing problem. We've been hearing about it for years. As AI-generated content starts flooding the web and filling up the places, and it gets harder and harder to tell when things are AI-generated. This will happen more and more, that you see videos that are AI-generated, but you can't tell images, posts, message board emails, articles, news articles, all these things. As AI gets better and better, all these things are harder and harder to tell from the real thing. And so Instagram it has a huge problem. Teen girls using Instagram suffer greatly psychologically. They have a much higher chance of suicide, cutting, being miserable, being depressed, because I think they look at Instagram and because they're using filters, the girls they see are like impossibly pretty and happy, and they think they're just inferior, and it makes them feel bad. And so they're going to start notifying parents if their teen starts to search for terms related to suicide or self-harm. So that may do some good. Instagram is trying to self-regulate because there's growing incentive to just age-gate social media and not let children use it until an age like 16. And that's probably going to happen in a lot of states, maybe nationally. And of course, they're trying to turn on some kind of defense so they can argue that you don't need to do it. We already did something about the problem. Anyway, that's enough of the news.